What's going on, boys? RedFlamingo here for another video. Today's video we're going to go over the most generic base defense layout information. And I'm going to use maybe a couple examples, but most of it's going to be, different layouts that I've made in order to properly explain tips that you can use in your base defensive layout. So basically I want to start off by saying the most important thing is, and this only applies to people who have, you know, all the trees cleared out from behind their base. And we'll get to what you guys should do in a little bit here, but the best layouts are the ones that are in this corner right here. And that's because if you think about the angles at which you can approach the HQ, you have to go, if your HQ is in this corner of the base opposed to this corner or in the middle or at the front or at the back, this corner you have to go through the most amount of defenses to get to the HQ because of the angles that you can enter with. And if you used, let's say, a layout that made your HQ be at the beach or in the middle of the map, with smoke and flares, you can basically approach the HQ from any angle. You can approach from this angle, you can get in behind his base, you can come from the sides, from the front. Your HQ has to be defended in a 360-degree angle. If you put it in this corner right here, you're only worrying about 90 degrees worth or a right angle worth of, space that troops have to come through. This corner as well, it's a little better, but as you can see, it's quite rounded, so there's more angles that you can come in by. Also, another, that's the most important thing. Secondly, you want to incorporate useless buildings into your defense buildings with your defense buildings. And this is partly because you're using these useless buildings as basically a meat shield. And, there's no walls in this game like there is in Clash of Clans, let's say. So you definitely want to be able to use these buildings as kind of like walls. Troops coming into the range of this boom cannon have to take out this storage right here. Meanwhile, this boom cannon is able to shoot the troops. It's basically slowing down troops and giving more time for your defenses to shoot at oncoming enemies. Now, for bases that don't have access to the full range of their map, his HQ isn't too bad back here, but you can still get around it and behind it. I would put it right somewhere in here, and that's because there's less angles that you can come at it from. Here you can come in from anywhere really. All back here, you can come in from here, come around, come out back here, all on the right. This side, you still have to defend quite a lot, but if your HQ's back here and then all your defenses are kind of around it, you can really maximize on the amount of angles that you have to defend. The third most important thing is spacing between your buildings. So we're going to move on to the next example here, just that I can show you guys another example. So this one is better spaced than the previous one because you can't hit two defenses with one artillery, let's say, for example. Barrages will do splash damage to other buildings close by, but for the most part, it's spaced out relatively okay. There's still much to be improved by this. Partly because, shock, if I were to shock these, I could shock these 5 buildings. If I were to move this you know, over 1. So there's 2 spaces in between these 2 buildings and 1 space in between these 2. You guys might think that I can't shock these 2 defenses at the same time, but shocks, maximum range, if you can time it and position it properly, can shock both of these defenses as well. So you definitely want to make sure that there's 2 spaces in between each building so that the 3 buildings can't all be shocked together. The next point I want to bring up is you don't want to have buildings, the same buildings in clumps. And what I mean by that is you don't want to have your 5 boom cannons all up in the same line, you know, or in the same side of the base. You want to space them out throughout your base so that different army compositions aren't strong versus certain bases, let's say. I'm going to go back to this last example here. Load anyway. Let's say you're a warrior player and you don't need to take any of these defenses out before you start your raid. You can just smoke through them and come to the HQ. Okay, so I have my useless buildings here, all space with no spaces in between them. You never want to have 4 buildings sharing the same corner. I can shoot 1 artillery, which costs me 3 GBE. I can kill all 4 buildings, which will end up giving me 12 GBE. So I'll be gaining 9 GBE, free GBE, just because I'm taking out buildings in a poorly designed base. I'm going to go back to my last example here. Another thing you don't want to do is place mines close to buildings that have a high probability of being taken out by GBE, which is gunboat energy. If I throw a barrage at this boom cannon, I'm going to be taking out all these mines right here. Obviously, you're not going to put mines like this on your base, but just to show you the extremes that, you know, any mine close to a boom cannon has the likelihood of being taken out, since boom cannons are the most likely building to be barraged or artilleried. Same thing with rocket launchers. Those have a pretty high probability of being taken out with gunboat energy before the battle starts. These shock mines aren't going to help my defense at all in, you know, slowing down the enemy, because they won't be there anymore. The barrage will take them out. Same with shock launchers. Shock launchers are, again, another building that has a high probability of being taken out. Now we'll go to an example here of a base, you know, that's poorly designed. So he's doing good because he has, you know, his useless buildings integrated with his defensive buildings. But his back is very exposed here. I'm going to come in with tanks. I'm just going to smoke past all his defenses. And this is only with 1 GBE statue, folks. You know, I'm not super offensive by any means. All I have is a GBE masterpiece. I take out the 2 buildings that are a threat to me, which are the 2 boom cannons, you know, and I have free reign on the rest of his base. That's an attack with, you know, half my army. You know, 6 tanks taking out a maxed out base is just, you know, shouldn't be happening. But because his base design is poor, you know, a good reason why I say if his HQ is in the corner here, he wouldn't have this issue, but just something to think about. Now my last piece of advice for you is something that guys like me love to take advantage of. You know, guys with not a lot of GBE, so gunboat energy, we just love to see, you know, unprotected buildings at the front of a base. So you might think that these buildings, you know, they're in front of these defenses, so, you know, they're protecting them. But if you look at it, most troops can kill these buildings here, these buildings, without getting fired upon because there's so many buildings at the front being, out of range of most of the defenses. And let's say a T-Med came in here, they'd get so much free gunboat energy because the base, you know, isn't incorporating these buildings well with these. Not just that, but the defenses aren't anywhere near the front of the meat of your base. So those are just some factors going into, if you want a good defensive layout. Now, I've said it and I'll say it again. Base defense isn't that important and it shouldn't be your main priority. Offense should be your main priority. But for people who want a couple more intel, let's say for their task force, these are definitely ways that you can, or tips that you can use to making your base a little bit better. Hopefully you enjoyed and you got a bit of tips from this video. If you did, I'd appreciate a subscription. And if you want to see more of me, you can definitely check me out on Twitch. I'm streaming every day at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I could answer questions. It's a lot more interactive than, let's say, a YouTube video would be if you have, a question to put in the comments or something. This way, on Twitch is a lot more, you get a lot better personalized information. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.